The Cleveland Browns just made the most controversial decision of the 2026 offseason, and it could either resurrect a franchise that's been drowning in quarterback chaos for decades or permanently cement their status as the NFL's most dysfunctional organization. With the 6th overall pick in the upcoming draft and a 5th-round rookie quarterback who's showing glimpses of brilliance mixed with devastating inconsistency, head coach Kevin Stefanski stands at a crossroads that will define not just his legacy, but the entire future of Cleveland football. And here's what nobody's talking about. This decision has already been made behind closed doors, sources close to the organization are whispering, and when it goes public, the fallout will be nuclear. If you want to stay ahead of every breaking development in this unfolding drama, hit that subscribe button right now, because what's about to happen in Cleveland will send shockwaves through the entire NFL, and you don't want to miss a single update as this story explodes. Let's rewind to April 2025, the NFL Draft. Shedeur Sanders, son of Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, sat in the green room watching pick after pick slide by. First round, gone. Second round, nothing. Third round, still waiting. The son of primetime, the quarterback who dominated at Colorado under his father's coaching, the player many analysts had mocked into the first round just months earlier, kept falling. Finally, in the 5th round with the 144th overall pick, the Cleveland Browns traded up to end his nightmare. General Manager Andrew Berry's words still echo. "We felt like it got to a point where he was probably mispriced relative to the draft. Really, the acquisition cost was pretty light, and it's a guy that we think can outproduce his draft slot." But here's the kicker that nobody saw coming at the time. The Browns had already drafted another quarterback just 1 round earlier. Dillon Gabriel, the Oregon standout, went in the 3rd round. 2 quarterbacks in 3 rounds. The message was clear even then. Cleveland had no idea who their future was, and they were throwing darts at the board hoping something would stick. Fast forward to January 2026, and the Browns are staring at a devastating 4-win, 12-loss season. Kevin Stefanski, the 2-time Coach of the Year, who once brought stability to one of the league's most cursed franchises, now has a combined record of 7 wins and 26 losses over the past 2 seasons. His job security hanging by a thin you could cut with a whisper. NFL insider Ian Rappaport recently reported that the Browns have conducted preliminary research on potential Stefanski replacements. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN dropped an even bigger bombshell. There's a 50-50 chance Stefanski and the Browns mutually part ways this offseason. Think about that. A coach who won Coach of the Year twice might be gone because he couldn't survive the toxic wasteland that Cleveland's front office created with the Deshaun Watson trade. Owner Jimmy Haslam himself called that trade a big swing and miss at the league's annual meeting last March. $230 million fully guaranteed for a quarterback who's played just 19 games since arriving in Cleveland and is now out for the season after re-tearing his Achilles tendon. That's the foundation Stefanski was forced to build on, and now he's the one potentially losing his job because of it. But here's where the Shedeur Sanders situation becomes absolutely critical. In the final 6 games of the 2025 season, Sanders took over as the starter. The results? Mixed at best. 1,289 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a QBR of just 20.2. Those are not franchise quarterback numbers. Those are the numbers of a 5th-round developmental prospect who's exactly what everyone thought he was when 31 teams passed on him multiple times. Yet in those same 6 games, there were flashes, moments where Sanders showed the touch, the timing, the poise that made him a superstar at Colorado. Deep throws to Isaiah Bond that dropped perfectly into his hands, feathered passes to tight end Harold Fannin Jr. that demonstrated elite accuracy, scrambles at critical moments that extended drives and kept hope alive. The question isn't whether Sanders showed talent, the question is whether he showed enough talent to convince a desperate franchise to pass on Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore in the upcoming draft.
Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner from Indiana, who just led the Hoosiers to their first Big Ten title since 1967 and a college football playoff berth. The quarterback, who completed 71.5% of his passes this season, with 33 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions. the prospect who's currently sitting at minus 200 odds to be the #1 overall pick in the 2026 draft. Then, there's Dante Moore from Oregon, the physically gifted signal caller with elite arm talent who completed 72.4% of his passes and is drawing comparisons to C.J. Stroud. Moore sits at plus 250 odds to go #1. The Browns, picking 6th overall, will almost certainly have access to one of these quarterbacks, maybe both. Some mock drafts even have Cleveland trading up to grab Mendoza at #1, sacrificing additional draft capital to end their quarterback nightmare once and for all. This is where Kevin Stefanski's future and Shadur Sanders' future become impossibly intertwined. If Stefansky stays, does he get to make the call on whether to draft a quarterback, or does the front office force a rookie passer on him, essentially admitting they don't trust his evaluation of Sanders? If Stefansky leaves, does the new head coach inherit Sanders and give him a fair shot, or does he immediately demand his own guy, turning Sanders into yet another Browns quarterback casualty? Mike McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins head coach, who's reportedly on Cleveland's radar as a potential Stefansky replacement, has a history with the Browns organization, from his time as wide receivers coach there back in 2014. If McDaniel comes to Cleveland, league sources suggest he'd want to bring his own quarterback, potentially targeting someone like Kyler Murray through trade or going all in on one of the draft's top prospects. That would make Sanders expendable immediately, a 5th-round pick who never really got a fair chance to prove he could be the guy. But there's another scenario playing out in Cleveland's war room right now, and it's the one that's causing the most heated debates among decision-makers. What if they're wrong about Sanders? What if the inconsistency, the interceptions, the growing pains are exactly what they should expect from a 5th-round rookie playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in football with limited weapons and a coaching staff fighting for their jobs? The Browns have 2 first-round picks in the 2026 draft thanks to the trade that sent their #2 overall selection to Jacksonville last year. They could use that 6th overall pick on offensive line help, someone like tackle Kelvin Fano, to finally give Sanders protection. They could grab a wide receiver like Carnell Tate from Ohio State in the 1st round, giving Sanders a true #1 target. They could build around him, bet on his development, and save their franchise quarterback search for 2027, when the class is supposedly stronger. Multiple mock drafts have Cleveland doing exactly this, constructing an entire draft around supporting Sanders rather than replacing him. Tommy Rees, the Browns' offensive coordinator who took over play-calling duties from Stefanski mid-season, has been receiving significant praise for his work with Sanders down the stretch. Reports indicate that Sanders' best performances came after Rees took control of the offense, implementing a system better suited to the young quarterback's skill set. If Cleveland brings back both Stefanski and Rees, and if they commit to building around Sanders, there's a legitimate argument that this could work. The Browns aren't far from playoff contention despite their record. They've been competitive in most games. They have young talent on defense with Mason Graham anchoring the defensive line as a 1st-round pick from last year's draft. They have a promising running back in Quinshon Judkins. The pieces are there. But championship windows in the NFL slam shut fast, and the Browns have been in perpetual rebuild mode since returning to Cleveland in 1999. They've started 40 different quarterbacks in that span, more than any team in the league. The desperation is palpable, the pressure is suffocating, and that's exactly why this decision is so dangerous.
Think about what happens if Cleveland passes on Mendoza and Moore to build around Sanders, and Sanders doesn't take the leap forward in year 2. They'll be right back in this same position in 2027, except now they've wasted another year, Stefanski is definitely gone, and they're starting over again with yet another coaching staff and yet another quarterback competition. But think about what happens if they draft Mendoza or Moore at #6 and that rookie struggles while Sanders goes somewhere else and becomes a legitimate starter. Browns fans will never forgive the organization for giving up on another quarterback too early, especially one with Sanders' pedigree and potential. It's a lose-lose situation unless someone makes the right call, and the Browns' track record of making the right call at quarterback is historically, monumentally, embarrassingly terrible. The financial implications can't be ignored either.
Deshaun Watson's contract is an albatross that will haunt Cleveland's salary cap for years. They have limited cap space heading into the offseason, projected to have just $7.9 million, ranking 26th in the league. Trading up for a top quarterback in the draft would cost additional picks. Signing a veteran free agent quarterback would cost precious cap dollars. Building around Sanders is, from a pure resource allocation standpoint, the most economically sensible path forward. But economics don't win championships, quarterbacks do. And right now, nobody in Cleveland knows if Shedeur Sanders can be that guy. The front office is split, coaching staff members are split, ownership is split. Some scouts who studied Sanders throughout the pre-draft process believe he has starting potential and just needs time and support. Others think the tape doesn't lie, that his inconsistency at Colorado behind a poor offensive line foreshadowed exactly what we're seeing now in Cleveland, and that no amount of development will change his ceiling. Owner Jimmy Haslam, who's made his share of catastrophic decisions since buying the Browns, stated before the season that 3-14 wouldn't cut it and that everyone would know what better looked like. Well, the Browns will finish with 4 or 5 wins depending on their final game. That's not better. That's arguably worse when you factor in the expectations after going to the playoffs just 2 years ago. Haslam has to decide not just on Stefanski, but on the entire direction of the franchise. Does he blow it up again? Another coaching search, another scheme change, another quarterback competition, another wasted year? Or does he show patience, give Stefansky one more year with Sanders as the unquestioned starter, and bet on continuity finally paying off? The problem with the latter approach is that Browns fans have heard the patience pitch before. They've been told to wait, to trust the process, to believe in the vision, and every single time it's ended in disappointment. The quarterback carousel keeps spinning, the losses keep piling up, the hope keeps dying. Stefanski himself hasn't helped matters with his recent press conferences. When asked directly if he wants to remain the Browns' head coach, he gave a carefully worded non-answer, saying he's privileged to have the job, but focusing solely on the next game. When asked about conversations with ownership regarding his future, he shut it down, refusing to discuss it publicly. Those non-answers tell you everything. If Stefanski was confident in his job security, if he was excited about the future with Sanders, he'd say so. The fact that he's being evasive suggests he knows what's coming, and it might not be pretty. Meanwhile, other teams are circling. The New York Giants, who just fired their head coach, are reportedly very interested in Stefanski if he becomes available. Multiple insiders have called him an ideal fit for New York, where he could develop their young quarterback Jackson Dart. So even if the Browns want to keep Stefanski, they might lose him anyway, to a team that actually values what he's accomplished despite impossible circumstances.
And that brings us to the nuclear scenario that league insiders are quietly discussing in January 2026. What if both Stefanski and Sanders are gone? What if Cleveland brings in Mike McDaniel or another offensive-minded head coach, drafts Fernando Mendoza at number 6, and starts completely fresh? It would be the most Cleveland Browns decision imaginable, abandoning a promising young quarterback after one developmental year because they couldn't wait, couldn't build properly, couldn't resist the temptation of the shiny new toy in the draft. But it might also be the right move. If the scouting reports on Mendoza are accurate, if he truly is the safest quarterback prospect in a generation with a sky-high floor and legitimate starting potential from day one, then passing on him to gamble on Sanders would be organizational malpractice. The Browns can't afford to get this wrong again. They've gotten it wrong for 25 years. At some point, the definition of insanity applies, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Maybe that means taking the sure thing in Mendoza. Maybe that means finally investing properly in a quarterback rather than bargain hunting in the 5th round or trading for damaged goods like Watson. The next few weeks will determine everything. The Browns' final game against Cincinnati, the coaching decisions that follow, the draft meetings where scouts present their boards and general managers pound tables for their preferred prospects, the owner's final call on whether to run it back or blow it all up. Shadur Sanders is caught in the middle of all of it, a 23-year-old kid whose NFL career might be over before it really began, all because he landed in the one organization that specializes in destroying quarterbacks. If Cleveland drafts a quarterback in April, Sanders becomes a backup, maybe gets traded for a late-round pick, maybe bounces around the league for a few years before washing out.
If Cleveland builds around him, he gets one more year to prove he's the answer, with the clock ticking and the pressure mounting and the entire fan base waiting to turn on him the moment he throws a bad interception. There's no easy path forward. There's no obvious right answer. There's only risk and uncertainty in the haunting knowledge that the Browns will probably, somehow, find a way to make the wrong choice. Again. But here's the thing nobody's saying out loud. What if Shedeur Sanders is actually good? What if the talent evaluators who had him as a first-round pick before the draft were right, and the teams that passed on him made a mistake? What if Cleveland, for once in their miserable existence, accidentally stumbled into finding their franchise quarterback in the 5th round, and all they have to do is not screw it up? That would require patience, vision, competent roster building around him, offensive line investment, weapons at receiver and tight end, a coaching staff that believes in him and schemes to his strengths. Basically, it would require the Browns to be something they've never been, a functional, well-run organization. The odds of that happening might be longer than the odds of Dante Moore going #1 overall. So we wait. We watch. We wonder if this time, maybe this time, things will be different in Cleveland. We wonder if Shedeur Sanders will get a fair shot or become another name on the depressingly long list of Browns quarterback failures. We wonder if Kevin Stefanski will survive to coach another season or become another casualty of an organization that eats coaches alive. We wonder if the Browns will finally break their quarterback curse, or if they're destined to repeat this same nightmare cycle forever, always searching, never finding, perpetually stuck in football purgatory. The Shedeur Sanders draft pick was supposed to be a low-risk, high-reward gamble, a 5th-round flyer on a talented quarterback from a football family who could maybe, possibly, hopefully turn into something special. Instead, it's become the defining question of the Browns' entire offseason. Build or replace, commit or move on, trust or trade up. And whatever they decide, half the fan base will call them idiots, and the other half will nervously hope they're right, knowing that in Cleveland, hope is usually just another word for future disappointment. The information in this video is based on reports from ESPN, NFL Network, Sports Illustrated, Yahoo Sports, and various other sports media sources covering the Cleveland Browns throughout the 2025 season and leading into the 2026 NFL Draft. Player statistics, coaching records, and draft projections reflect the most current information available as of early January 2026. Team situations, coaching statuses, and front office decisions remain ongoing developments that could change as the offseason progresses.